A petition was recently signed in California to ban the sale of recreational business in dispensaries in light of the shelter-in-place order there. They're only allowed to deliver to recreational consumers and are not allowed to do any curbside or in-store sales adapted for minimal contact, like other businesses seem to be doing. This seems to be restricted to non-medical sale of cannabis, so patients would still be allowed to go in person to the dispensary. I have a couple of problems with this restriction. I think this idea is damaging to businesses and their employees and their incomes, and I think that this will also have a knock-on effect on medical patients, both those that are authorized by the state to have a medical marijuana identification card and those that are self-medicating as well. One problem facing patients is that when Prop 64 legalized marijuana, since it was recreational, some patients would just stop renewing doctor's orders and buy recreationally instead, because you can just walk into the store. You don't have to maintain a doctor-patient relationship and assume all of the associated costs, especially if it's not covered through insurance, and you still get your medicine. And if you have a qualifying condition but just don't want to go through the hassle, let's be real, this exists too. It's legal regardless as long as you're old enough. And of course, I'm not endorsing this. I'm a medical student, so it's very much not in my best interest that people avoid the medical system, and there is a larger reason why you get the recommendation to actually get ongoing guidance on how to implement it in your life in a healthy and sustainable way. But it's the way that it is regardless of what I think. And I think that this is actually reflected in the statistics relating to new medical marijuana licenses issued. Surprise of all surprises, it dropped off significantly, 34% in 2018 and an additional 44% in the following year. Previously, it had been hovering around, the 6,000, 7,000 range ever since about 2011, and it hasn't fallen below 6,000 new licenses since 2004. California just recorded the smallest increase in new medical marijuana cards in the past 15 years. So now they would have to get new recommendations from doctors. This is assuming that they're doing office visits right now during this pandemic. And with as many people who are now out of work, how likely is it that patients can even afford to assume the additional costs, particularly if it's not covered through insurance? Marijuana businesses that rely on both medical and recreational business will only be able to serve medical patients, which I think it's uncontroversial to say that this would preclude a pretty large part of their revenue. And those that serve exclusively recreational business, well, they have to either deliver to their consumers, which many do not have the resources right now to do, particularly if they don't have any cash flow. And the rest are basically out of luck until further notice. Those who do have the resources to offer delivery, can they satisfy all of the demand that they'll definitely be getting is the question. Some businesses are already saying no. Even though they have tried to scale, it probably won't be enough to fit the regional demand. I imagine many of them will fold because it's expensive to run a business, especially in California. How long can these businesses actually withstand shutdowns like this and hits to their revenue? And at this point, who even knows when this will end and how long this will last? And also, how is it at all productive to basically vice grip an essential service by their bank account? At what point are you putting the medical patients at a higher risk because they can't get their medicine anymore, because the businesses are failing, because you took away half of their cash flow by denying them the ability to use social distancing measures, but also sell to recreational consumers as well, so that their revenue doesn't just completely fall off a cliff and they can't support themselves anymore. You definitely don't want people crowding dispensaries in a stay-at-home order. But ultimately, I think it's important to consider the businesses too, because the moment that we endanger an essential service like dispensaries to the point where they shut down, this affects everybody, not just recreational patients, not just people who use it for maybe frivolous reasons. Medical patients do not have access to cannabis if the stores shut down. And while you can grow your own plants in California, both recreationally and medicinally, especially if you rent, you may not be allowed to do it in your residence. And even if you are allowed, if you own a house or something, we can't expect that this is a backup plan for everybody. And it would take a grand or more and basically 4 to 6 months to harvest anything meaningful anyways, even if they started today. It may seem on the surface to be trivial that recreational cannabis consumers are just stoners trying to get high, and it's fine if they get cut off except for delivery. Maybe they're slightly irritated that they can't smoke, but thinking of all the ways ways in which this could hurt the businesses that need the revenue to support the medical patients as well. I don't think it's quite so simple as cut off the recreational patients and have less people in the stores. Maybe the businesses aren't going to be okay coming out of this. These businesses have to pay rent and mortgage and utilities and property taxes just like the rest of us. People are already losing their jobs. People are already getting their hours slashed and being told to work from home and stuff. So if cannabis businesses are so essential for the quality of life of the medical patients that they serve, it's important, I think, to not destroy their revenue any more than it already is destroyed by this, but to also use strategies to limit contact with patients and staff as long as these orders persist. And by all accounts, it sounded like they were doing just that already. Dispensaries were doing curbside pickup, and they were wearing gloves and masks and stuff, reducing staff to assist in the social distancing and cleaning things more rigorously like the rest of the business world seems to have been doing lately. If they are really as important a service as governments are declaring them to be, what good does it do for the most vulnerable among their consumers, the medical patients that need the medicine? What good does it do to the patients to push the business out of business with strict regulation? I just don't agree that this is a good move. But if you disagree, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, stay meducated.